Well, we are all getting ready for what could be a wild 2024 with the next presidential election on the agenda. But we also know that there are concerns about what might play out. And the focus on elections in general is getting quite a bit more traction after what was perceived to have occurred in 2020, as well as the impact from social media and the potential impact from AI and more. Former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang has co authored a novel along with Canadian journalist Stephen Marsh titled The Last Election, which puts forward a day where there are more candidates running for office, the highest office in the land, than just the two predominant political parties. And a pleasure to have him joining us right now. Andrew, great to have you with us. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure.
Let me start with the backstory on your interest on doing a book like this and what you potentially see could play out here in the years ahead.
I get asked, hey, are you going to run for president all the time? I ran for president. I have a lot of experiences I wanted to convey. And so The Last Election is a novel about what happens if a heavyweight independent decides to run for president. Imagine a streamlined narrative with characters and motivations. The main character is the campaign manager of the independent candidate. And I wanted to paint a vivid picture of what could be on the horizon for us, and why even folks who really like independent candidates may or may not be excited. In large part because our system right now isn't set up to accommodate new parties or perspectives.
Yeah, that's the unique side to this, is that the strength of both the Democratic and Republican Party in terms of the electoral process makes it such a challenge. And I mean, it even makes it a big challenge for somebody to win from a third party if they're running for Congress right now.
Oh, Congress is actually maybe the biggest setup in terms of independent candidates. So what's fun is Forward supports independents around the country. And we have mayors, we have state legislators, we have county executives, but congressional districts, that's in some ways where it's most rigorously enforced. I will tell you, it's much more likely to get an independent senator from a state, because statewide, I don't know if your listeners know this, but about half of Americans now say we're independents. It's something like 25% Dem, 23% Republican, and then 49% independent. So if you actually let the votes play out more openly, as in a statewide race, the independent can win.
But I think the perception is that right now is that there is still a belief by probably a lot of those people that a vote for an independent candidate is a lost vote. That structure that is in place right now makes it so challenging for a candidate from an independent side to be able to win the presidency right now.
It's one reason why we need something like ranked choice voting, where then anyone can vote for whomever you want, and you can't be labeled a spoiler, can't be said, hey, you're messing it up, you're a bully. So I'm going to imagine your audience is very, very business minded. And I want to break down what I figured out about our system. What do you think the approval rating is for Congress right now, Dan?
I'm going to say it's pretty low. I'm going to say it's down in the 20s.
Yeah, it's like 15 to 24%. What do you think the re-election rate is for incumbent members of Congress?
Oh, I think it's incredibly high. I think it's probably up in the 80s.
94%.
Yeah.
It's a better win rate than the Jordan-era Chicago Bulls. So the average American's like, hey, what the heck is going on? And they're told, hey, nothing can change, because 90% of the districts are drawn to be either blue or red. To your point, like if you have an independent member of Congress, like, no, we drew the districts, so they're going to be blue or red. And there's no suspense as to which party is going to win that district. Only 5 to 10% of races are even marginally competitive in any given cycle. So if there's one thing the parties agree on, it's we don't like to compete. We don't even like to compete with each other, really. So in that system, then we get more and more agitated and angry. The second big fiction in American life is that our leaders have to make 51% of us happy. They don't. They just need to keep the 10 to 12% most extreme, polarized, hyper partisans off their back, and then they coast. So in that system, our incentives are getting dragged to the extremes. And then you have media organizations separating us into tribes and teams. And then you have social media pouring gasoline on the whole thing. So that's why it feels like we're being pulled apart, because of bad incentives. And for your business folks who love this stuff or hate it, whatever, there's a book called The Politics Industry by Michael Porter and Catherine Gale that breaks down the incentives. And it also has a solution, which, by the way, now my Forward Party is focused on delivering to the American people. And that's this: get rid of the party primaries, make it so that anyone can vote for anyone. And then that fiction that they have to make 51% of us happy actually becomes real. And there are several states who've done this. Alaska got rid of Sarah Palin, had Lisa Murkowski fend off a Trump-endorsed challenger, even though she voted to impeach Trump. Think about that in Alaska. Cost of $6 million, and that's evergreen. We're going to spend $10 billion hating each other and beating each other up next cycle. $6 million to get rid of the primaries in a state? It's the best freaking bargain in American history. So that is the work that we need to do. We need to get rid of the party primaries. And this, now the last election, is in some part about what happens when the parties deliver candidates that don't make any sense. I'm going to call them Joe Biden and Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like the folks listening to this, I don't know you at all. I would probably take you as president over those two guys. Like, you know, and I'm not talking about you, Dan. I'm talking about anyone listening to this right now. Yeah. You know, I mean, like, that's the absurdity of the system. 330 million people, those are your choices. Think about what the system's delivering and then what happens next.
Well, and the book is interesting because it really does get into some interesting possibilities of what could occur if there is strength within a third-party candidate, and what potentially would happen if you move forward with that type of a policy in terms of how we're looking at elections in general.
Yeah, I wanted to really game plan it out. You know, like I'm like a numbers guy who's been in this mix. And so I said, you know what? Here's what you would do. Here's how the campaign would run. Here are the problems. Here are the opportunities. And then here's what I think would be the most likely outcome. So for those of you who are interested in what I've said, it's like, look about the system writ large. Again, Politics Industry, incredible book, not mine, Catherine Gale and Michael Porter. I wrote a book, nonfiction, called Forward, which is saying, look, this system's going to just tear us apart, and it's going to get worse and worse. And then I tried to fictionalize it. And by the way, now this is getting shopped in Hollywood for a screenplay, because people like stories sometimes more than they like nonfiction, but I have a feeling your crowd actually prefers nonfiction. So if you want to check out nonfiction as to why our politics are so broken, Politics Industry by Catherine Gale and Michael Porter, and then you can check out my book Forward, Notes on Our Democracy, because you know, I mean, frankly, I'm going to just say it, Dan. I'm going to say it. I appreciate you. Adult men seldom read fiction. So thank you for having me on for this, but I'm just letting you all know, it's like, I get it. You know, like, I mean, I wrote a novel to get to certain people, but, you know, we're not the target demo.
Well, I was going to say, numbers are kind of important, I think, in many cases in and around our landscape. But I think it's interesting you doing a book like this, because you certainly have the experience firsthand of what it's like to be involved in that landscape, involved in that process, and to see all of this play out, and at the same time, see the problems that are there and maybe the things that we need to consider moving forward about our entire election process.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so much corruption now. And again, I mean, I'm just going to say again, for the 24th cycle, everyone can see it. Hey, don't like Joe Biden? Tough luck. No process, no debates, no vote, and the fix is in. And every major Democrat's being told, you will ruin your career by running against Joe, so just wait in line. And now we have the profiles and courage of crickets, as 73% of us think, wait a minute, this guy is going to be 82 at the end of 24? You know, like, I'm not comfortable with that. That's choice number one. Choice number two, and a lot of folks listening to this, you were what I'm going to call moderate Republicans before the Republican Party just went haywire, and now you're like, what the hell am I? If you are in that category, check out Forward, really, because like, we've got a lot of folks that resemble that, a lot of business leaders. I mean, if you're a business leader, what the hell do you do at this point? So you have Trump hovering over that entire proceeding, up by 35, 40 points, and then the rest of the field, unfortunately, is competing for second place. And that's how you wind up with these two dudes if you had the general population and real choices, you don't end up with anything like these guys.
Let me talk a couple of areas for you as we kind of go into this next year. And one is AI and the importance we have obviously seen it pick up here in the last several months, and the concerns that are out there about how AI, while it may have great benefit in so many different areas, could potentially have an impact in areas like political elections and social media and more misinformation that we've already seen.
Yeah, your listeners will understand this. Imagine an environment where a synthetic deepfake video, audio tape, image, text message, all of it is generatable for free. And then imagine a legion of bad actors, political or otherwise, with those tools. I think the last month of the election, you're going to want to turn your social media feed off because it's just going to be so rancid. There are going to be so many weird videos. You're like, wait, he did what? He said what? And then by the time that gets debunked, there's like, another 5 in your feed. $10 billion spent trying to beat each other up. By the way, we all know what's going to decide this election. It's not you or me. Actually, it might be you, Dan. It's 250,000 swing voters in 5 states. You know what I mean? That's Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. And so the $10 billion, I mean, geez, it's like if you break down actually how much is going to get spent, we should just be giving all those swing voters, the keys to the kingdom.
Trust me, we saw it in 2016 here firsthand, and we expect to see it here in Pennsylvania again in 2024. How much then does the discussion around economy really play into the decision about who is going to be the next president? And I ask that again for you having been there, but we're also in a time where the economy is very much kind of up and down at this point, and the term recession is still being talked about a lot as we head into 2024.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the real problems for Joe and the incumbents is that even as the economy in some ways holds up very well, surprisingly well, I would say, there are a lot of Americans who are still very, very ticked off. I don't know if you saw the headline, but child poverty went up from 5% to 12% in 2022. So there are a lot of Americans who are like, telling me this economy is great, like that, the super mad inflation, obviously. There are a couple of variables going into next year. The economy is a major one. I will say Joe's age and health is another. It's like he could just have a problem in any given day. Trump too, obviously. I mean, Trump's no spring chicken. But people think that this is somehow safe. I mean, it's not safe. Like Joe Biden, it's a 39% approval rating. I'm going to say what I've said publicly in other venues. Joe should either step aside and be like Mitt Romney. He should say, look, let's have a real primary and anyone who wants can run and let's have debates. And then I will vanquish you all. And then you'll see I've still got it. Or I lose and then someone else has it. Or at a minimum, have a primary for who his vice president should be. Because if you have an 82-year-old, like the odds of your VP taking over are pretty significant and people aren't feeling Kamala. So it's like, look, just like say, hey, Kamala, like defend your spot against all the other, and then oh my gosh, holy cow, would every Dem be like, oh, I want oh, that would. And everyone listening to this, if you're running a business or organization and it was at all healthy, you would do one of these 3 things.
What do you want people when they read the last election really to take away, do you hope?
I want them to think, wow, is this realistic? It is. Could it happen? It could. And if I want to do something about it, what should I do? And one of the things I'm going to suggest again is the 2 parties do not have our backs. They're crumbling before our eyes. And there needs to be a new path, a new alternative. But there also just needs to be a better system. If you had something like ranked choice voting, problem solved. As it is, the 2 parties are just going to try and bully us into submission. And they're going to deliver very, very bad results. Because if you have candidates that 2/3 of Americans do not like, someone's going to run. I mean, nature abhors a vacuum, business abhors a vacuum. In a country of 330 million, if you offer us 2 terrible choices, someone's going to run.
Andrew, great to meet you. Thanks very much for your time. All the best with the book.
Fantastic. Thanks. And go PA. You really are going to decide things and
We are.
decide the future. PA.
Oh, trust me, we're getting ready for what could be an amazing next
Turn
12
off your
months here in
TVs
Pennsylvania.
too. Don't just turn off your social media. Turn off your TVs.
Thanks, Andrew. Great luck with the book. All the best.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
You got it. Former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. The book, by the way, as we mentioned, co-authored with Stephen Marsh, is titled The Last Election. All right, great. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you. All the best.
You too.